Hello everybody, my name is RagingRaptor and I welcome you to a new World of Tanks video. In today's video I want to once again talk about the sandbox server, or rather I want to try and analyze what exactly is the problem we got, or why we have now this problem called the gold epidemic, basically. That everybody doesn't care and just spams gold. Best example would be ranked right now, and it's obvious when you just look at the surface. Gold basically is just better in every single aspect. Best example would be Chieftain. It has APCR as standard rounds and it has APCR as gold rounds. So you basically do not lose anything when you are shooting gold ammunition, because the gold ammunition has the same caliber diameter, they just have more penetration. That is one of those rather big problems. But today I don't really want to talk about the problems which we have here, that just those, well, shots are basically better in every single way, except for the price, obviously. I want to talk about why exactly so many people, and me including, got accustomed to spamming gold ammunition at highly armored tanks, or rather at tanks which are too highly armored. And I already did a post on Reddit where I explained this problem, and I also proposed a hotfix, but I don't really want to show it to you guys. You can read it up if you want. I do have to say though, in hindsight, I'm not really confident about the hotfix I posted, or the idea for a hotfix basically. I think it still needs a little bit tuning and so on and so forth. I still, however, want to propose a big idea, which would be a completely ammunition overhaul, where we should get a lot of different ammunition types, all at roughly the same price, which all have their pros and cons to make this game a lot more enjoyable and a lot more tactical, except for just blindly spamming or dab the 2 key. And to first explain exactly where we are at, I would like to try and figure with you out where the problem lies. Why exactly we all got so accustomed to spamming gold ammunition. So I'm going to quickly change scene and have to get the face cam working again. There we go. Now I'm on big screens. And I wanna take this pen as an example. It's nothing sponsored or anything, it's just this pencil. And now let's all just imagine that this pencil is the game World of Tanks. It's very broken down, it's just, look, not a pencil, it's just to show you what I want to explain right now, as a little bit of a helping image. So, let's say this pencil is pretty good. It writes perfectly, it has no problem, you can write very well. It does some good black stuff, it works wonderful. But now and then, those pencils run into a problem, or rather run out of the problem called ink. And you have to take them apart, you most of the time screw them apart, you just exchange this ink cartridge, which is very bent with this pen, but that's not the point. So you just get a new cartridge, put it back in, you screw it back together, and ta-da! The pencil would, in theory, work again without any issue. So, now let's just imagine that just somebody, a new employee or something, or just the new kid on the block, finds out, oh damn it, the pencil is running out of ink or has no ink anymore. So he does what everybody does, he is pulling it apart, throwing this old thingy here, the old cartridge, into the garbage bin, gets a new one, and puts it back in, and screws it back together, and suddenly, oh, what's this? Apparently, it's not working anymore. Like you can still write. Look at, like right now we have the problem. We can't really control where this knob is to basically switch on and off this pen, all right? So either we have it all the way out, or if we do this, it's kind of like it doesn't really work anymore. It doesn't really retract, or now it retracts and we can't write. So it still works, but something crucial is missing for its functionality. So the new employee, again, I just want to make this clear, this is not to make fun of wargaming or anybody at working at wargaming. It's just as a little example. So the new employee is like, damn it, what is going on? He pulls it back apart again. He gets a new cartridge and puts it back in again. And still, the thing is not working. It doesn't simply work. It looks like something is missing. And now, after looking around, he finally notices, oh, in between his keys on his keyboard, there is a spring. The spring is a crucial part for the workings of this pen. Because without the spring, the knob or the switch behind here can't retract. And this pencil is basically only half functioning. So, what I want to say with this, now it's finally working again with the spring. What I want to say with this is, we miss something. And this something led to us to improvise. And I think you guessed it by now. This thing which I want to talk about today is weak spots. I think that when we are already looking at ammunition rebalance, it is key to also look at the tanks in general, because a lot of the tanks which got newly introduced some months ago, I'm not now talking about new Kranwagen and the Judas tanks, because they do have weak spots. I'm talking about, and I think you already know, I'm talking about tank like Type 5 Heavy, Super Conqueror, Badger, and Object 268 version 4, as well as the best tier 10 heavy tank in the game, aka the Object 430U. So now let's just quickly switch back to our garage. So there we go, and let's have a look what I mean. The problem is, we can easily have a look at different tanks, the tanks which I just mentioned basically. We can have a look at the Super Conqueror, for example. The only way to penetrate a Super Conqueror basically is to hit its lower plate, which is fairly weak, or its cupola. Just the big problem with its cupola is that, well, if you are playing this tank in a hold down position, you're most of the time just out of luck to actually even hit it. Especially if you have a gun with AP rounds as premium shells, because then, APCR rounds as premium shells, because then you most of the time will just auto bounce. You can see, if you just look at frontally at it, it's basically only this small stripe up there, which in theory could be penetratable, but you can see everywhere we have ricochets. If you load APCR shells, there is nothing really changing except for the upper plate being an 80% way of probably penetrating. Yeah, that's it. I'm not saying that there is no skill involved to playing the Super Conqueror. What I am saying, however, is the lack of weak spots make this tank very frustrating to play against. And you know what we have to do to counter this at the given moment? For example, when I'm playing Chieftain, I have to load gold ammunition and hit him underneath here, where he is around 300 to 280 millimeters thick. This is definitely not game design. I don't want to say that Super Conqueror is not an easy tank to play, yet it is rather easy when you just hide your hole. You are an incredible powerful fortress, because again, your cupola up here is only being penetrable when you have heat rounds. And the roof, as you can see, is 50.8 millimeters thick, meaning that most of the time, or most high caliber guns, simply bounce off because it is engineered that way. You can see every single gun above or below 152.4 millimeters will ricochet off from here. So even tank guns like this new, the 60 TP tank gun, which is, as far as I remember, this accepts 152 millimeters, 0.4. As you can see, even this gun, it will bounce off because it ricochets. And this is kind of a pity if you think about it. You could already make the Super Conqueror a lot more fragile by adding this, instead of 50.8, 50 millimeters. But that's now beside the point. Another problematic tank I already talked about is obviously the Type 5 Heavy, because, and guys, this is true, 270 millimeters is not a weak spot. 260 millimeters is not a weak spot, as is 210 millimeters. Those tanks do not pose any weak spots, and this is toxic for the game because, again, what you have to do basically is just load your skill rounds and run with it. Because otherwise you don't have chances to penetrate this tank frontally. Because even tier 10 heavy tanks have problems. Excuse me, it was 250, not 260. Even tier 10 heavy tanks have troubles penetrating those, in quotation mark, weak spots. And now we are just looking at same tier games. Now imagine if it's a tier 8 tank, a tier 8 heavy tank. He's basically getting run over by the type 5 heavy, and this is not good because at the moment what a type 5 heavy can do, and I'm happy that they removed or nerfed the HE gun by a lot, he could just run over the enemy tier 8 and tier 9 tanks most of the time even, without getting punished back because his armor is just too thick. So, how would, in my personal opinion, a decently balanced tank look? And you might have already seen it in the background while we were here in the garage. I actually want to promote the armor design of the Mauerbrecher for super heavy tanks. I still think that there needs to be things done because it is not perfect, but it is very, very well played anyway. So now let's have a look at the Mauerbrecher's armor layout. And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, Mauerbrecher is a fucking stupid bad tank. And again, I'm not objecting to that. I'm even that retard which basically free marked this tank, as you might have seen. The point is of the Mauerbrecher, however, it has a big lower plate weak spot, which is 130 millimeters thick. Depending how you angle it, it can go up to 200 millimeters. It has this MG port, which is 140 millimeters thick and is part of the damage model. As you can see, it bulbs out or bulges out. And lastly, it has the cupola, which is 150 millimeters thick. I would like to advocate that Wargaming should consider removing this weak spot over here and just make it 180 millimeters thick, and maybe even adding more frontal turret face armor to the Mauerbrecher, but leaving those two weak spots, because those two weak spot placements are awesome in my personal opinion, because they provoke good play style, or rather good map knowledge. Right now, when we again go back to the Super Conqueror, the only thing you basically have to do is stay hull down, which in a lot of the maps is not that hard when you have a lower plate where you can just hide because you have 10 degrees of gun depression. The same goes with the Type 5 Heavy, just the Type 5 Heavy has frontally no real weak spot. The only one might be those parts over here, but they're very, 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 very hard to hit. So, now what could a good Mauerbrecher player do? Let's just pretend that we take this page here, and this is a wall. So, in theory, a good Mauerbrecher driver would try to angle his tank, something like this, to hide its lower plate, and look at you around like this. So, a good Mauerbrecher player would angle his tank like this, so just a tiny touch of his cupola is looking out, but he can shoot at you and his lower plate is covered. Let's just do this. I just gotta get a picture to make it more realistic, you know, guys. Doing everything for you just because you're so awesome. Oh, perfect. It's high. No, wait, it doesn't work. Come on. Yeah, it's probably too high it's too much of a high definition wall. Why is it called Trump's wall? God damn it. I don't want to make this political. But there we go. This is what I mean. A good Mauerbrecher player can hide his lower plate weak spot as well as most of its turret weak spot. And this is also what used to be the case with the Tortoise. I also do think that the Tortoise at the point or at the moment is too over armored in my opinion. Why exactly? Because when we look at the Tortoise's armor model, you can see that the cupola, or the weak part of the cupola, is 170 to 200 millimeters effective thick, which is really, really annoying to fight against when you are a lower tiered opponent. I do, however, have to say that it still needs a decent chunk of skill to know where to drive and use something like this. Let's imagine the gun is like this, and once again we take our wall and hide your cupola like this. You still have this cupola, which is harder to hit, and I also really want to say Wargaming make this cupola again weaker because 250 millimeters is too strong, but it's much easier to hide, so something like this. Again, in my opinion, this is well done gameplay, or rather well balanced tanks, because it needs skill from the player to know where to go. And yes, they can hold down a flank, obviously. But then again, most maps, except for the exceptions, which are obviously Paris and Empire's Border, as well as sometimes Pilsen and what's it called? Airfield. We don't really have too many options to flank them, so there those tanks can be a little bit overpowered. But then again, I have to say that if somebody plays like this, I have to say respectable, because they use their brain. Lastly, obviously, I want to talk about the most brokenest tier 10 heavy tank in a game, aka the Object 430U. And it's just to make basically a tiny little funny note. This tank, again, is one of those tanks which have no frontal weak spot except for the lower plate. I once again want to advocate that this is very bad game design, because just hiding your lower plate doesn't make this tank less overpowered. You might say, yes, it has a turret phase and so on and so forth. The Object 705A has a stronger turret phase. You should not forget, however, the Object 705A has also a lot bigger flat surfaces over here. As you can see, there are a lot bigger flat surfaces, plus it's way less mobile. And the gun mantlet is not extending downwards like it is for the 430U, as you can see here, and give it another 300 millimeters of armor. This is bad game design, in my opinion. It's not good game design. And to just put this into perspective, if you ever saw a tank, you know they're bulky machines. But looking at the size of a 430U when you're, for example, in game, please consider that this cupola right here has this thickness. Those are 300 millimeters or 30 centimeters. 1 foot of armor on a cupola. So basically, if we look at the damage model, you can see it goes almost all around the front. It's basically in front of the commander. We have this size of armor. Come on, guys, let's be honest. This is not realistic, is it now? So much armor, that's not realistic. Come on. I just want to also show this ridiculousness, because I think it's sometimes forgotten. Also, there is something which I have to say which I really don't like about World of Tanks' damage model, is the lack of depth. In the sense of, we are missing plates, in the sense of, yeah, we're just missing plates. Let's see the Mauer breaker. Let's look at this side. You can see from all the way over here, it's 130 millimeters, to all the way behind here, it's 130 millimeters. If you're aiming here, it's 65 millimeters. And that's a kind of weird if you think about it. So here we have 130 millimeters. Now let's have a look at the Mauer breaker side over here, and you might notice that here we have 2 plates joined together, something like this, and obviously those how should I say, spurs got cut off or welded off. But you can see that one of those plates is looking like this. So in theory, if somebody shoots over here on, for example, those welding point, they would not even hit the interior of the tank. They would just shoot into this thick plate inside. And in theory, let's be fair, it would have the thickness of the width of the tank. This is also something which I think is a little bit sad that this is missing in the game. But again, I'm not entirely sure if this would be very beneficial to anybody in this game, except it could lead to 1 or 2 bounces here and there. And it's not the only tank we could make this experiment with. Even the Love has this plate over here, and most notable the mouse as well. You can see all those plates. If we look at the damage model of the mouse, you will also again notice that the thickness of the plate is, yes, it is part here, you can see, that's great. But again, if you think about it, just this side over here, that's not 250 millimeters thick. In theory, it would be the width of the tank. At least here it got made thicker to represent that thickness, which is kudos to them. And I think there was one final thing I wanted to talk about or quickly show you, but I'm not entirely sure anymore. Yeah, about the Chieftain. I personally rather play against the Chieftain than an object for 30U. And one thing I do not understand by now is, even though they introduced the FV4201 Chieftain version, I don't understand why they are not introducing the Mark 6 version of the Chieftain, because this one has a stronger turret. It has 350mm thick and a cupola which is around 170 to 200mm thick. The Chieftain Mark 6, on the other hand, which is, I think it's the fully fledged version of the Chieftain, you can see it has the same-ish upper front plate, but the turret face is spot-wise weaker or stronger, you can see here, but the cupola is much bigger, and it's 60mm thick. So again, this tank basically has a more gameplay friendly armor layout than the T95 FV4201 Chieftain. So I don't understand why they're not introducing the Mark 6 version. But yeah, those were my 2 cents about, well, my 2 times 10 minutes about problem in World of Tanks about its armor layout. And I hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know in the comment section below. And again, I'm going to work on my personal armor revision idea. And yeah, this should be the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for your attention, and I'll talk to you all in a different video. Goodbye, guys.